Walk out now, or I'll put you in a coma. That's what the MMA fighter said to me in the parking lot behind Murphy's bar, his voice thick with alcohol and arrogance, his knuckles popping like gunfire in the cold Charlotte night. He squared up with the kind of exaggerated swagger you only see in men who mistake muscle for menace. This was Brock, the same man my wife had been sleeping with for 3 months. He stood there with his chest puffed out, veins bulging against the fabric of his too-tight shirt, like he was seconds away from stepping into the octagon. His eyes glistened with the thrill of confrontation. And right beside him was Jessica, arms folded, watching me with that look, disappointment mixed with contempt, like she was daring me to prove I wasn't the coward she believed I'd become. My name's Calvin Briggs. I'm 38. 14 years in special operations before coming home to Charlotte, North Carolina. Now I build houses instead of neutralizing threats in dusty places the average American couldn't find on a map. But some habits don't leave you. Reading a room. Noticing how a man carries himself. Calculating his weaknesses before he even realizes you're watching. Brock leaned forward, his grin wide and wolfish. She's finally with someone strong, he said, stepping closer until I could smell the cocktail of protein powder and cheap beer on his breath. Someone who can actually protect her. Jessica didn't flinch. She didn't step away from him or correct him. She just stared at me, silent confirmation that every word out of his mouth was a knife she wanted me to feel. I gave him a small, knowing smile. Fighting in a cage is one thing. Spending 14 years overseas taught me 53 ways to end a fight without breaking a sweat. He laughed, but I caught the flicker in his eyes, the microsecond of doubt. I'd seen that same flicker in the eyes of men who realized too late they weren't the predator in the room. Good, Brock said, puffing his chest even more. You think your little war stories scare me? His voice had lost a fraction of its edge. I started rolling up my sleeves, not because I planned to fight, but because I wanted him to see. The jagged shrapnel scars from Kandahar. The burn marks from Somalia. The deep knife slash across my forearm that should have ended me in Syria but didn't. My arms weren't a story of vanity like his. They were a history book written in blood, fire, and steel. Brock's posture changed. Shoulders dropped. Just a little. He wasn't expecting this kind of silence, this kind of confidence. He was expecting fear. Calvin, stop. Jessica's voice cut sharp through the night air. You're making a scene. I turned and really looked at her. This woman I'd married 6 years ago. The woman who once traced those scars with her fingers and told me she was proud of the sacrifices I'd made. Now she stood behind a man who thought flexing his biceps made him strong. I'm not making anything, I said quietly. Just showing your boyfriend what real fighting looks like. That's when Brock took a step back. Just one, but enough. His eyes darted sideways like he was calculating whether this was worth the risk. Then another step back. He tried to recover, his jaw tightening, his voice forced. This isn't over. But we all knew it was. I walked to my truck, slid behind the wheel, and started the engine. As I pulled out of the lot, I caught sight of him leaning down to whisper something to Jessica. She nodded, then smiled, a cold, satisfied smile. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about her anymore. This wasn't about marriage or betrayal. It was about Brock. A man who thought humiliating me in public would cement his image. A man who thought intimidating a veteran would earn him dominance. He had no idea what he'd just started. I met Jessica on a quiet afternoon at a coffee shop near Fort Bragg. I was in between deployments, trying to remember how to be normal for a few weeks before shipping back out. She was finishing her nursing degree, working double shifts to cover tuition. She had that kind of smile that made you forget the sandstorms, the smell of cordite, the weight of memories that never let you sleep. She asked what I was reading, and before I knew it, I was telling her stories I hadn't told anyone. Not the classified details, but the human parts, what it felt like to come home after months of living like a shadow. She listened, eyes wide, like she actually wanted to understand. 2 years later we got married. Nothing extravagant, just a small ceremony in her grandmother's lace dress, a handful of my army buddies standing at my side. She cried when I said my vows. Promised to love her through whatever came next. I meant every word. But civilian life was a different battlefield. It was quiet in a way that made my skin crawl. I'd jump at sudden noises, wake up drenched in sweat from dreams I couldn't control. Jessica would find me checking the locks at 3 in the morning, every window, every door, over and over again. She never complained. She'd just pull me back to bed, hold me until the tension left my shoulders. Work helped. Drift line construction gave me purpose. Frank Morrison, the owner, was a Marine vet who understood men like me. Men who needed structure, who needed to build instead of destroy. Laying bricks, raising walls, putting roofs over families. It felt like redemption. But somewhere along the line, something shifted. Jessica joined a new gym. At first it seemed harmless. She said she wanted to feel stronger, more independent. But soon the late nights began. She started staring at her phone longer than she looked at me. She picked fights about nonsense, how I loaded the dishwasher, the wrong kind of milk, my silence at dinner. I should have seen it sooner. The distance in her eyes. The way she flinched when I touched her shoulder. 3 months ago, she told me she was moving in with her sister for a while. Needed space. Needed to think. I let her go, believing maybe she'd come back. 2 weeks later, my neighbor's kid posted a picture online. Jessica sitting across from Brock at a restaurant, holding his hand like she used to hold mine. That was when the truth cut deeper than any knife I'd taken overseas. I didn't yell. Didn't confront her. Didn't beg. Instead, I drove to Brock's gym, watched him spar, listened to him brag about his record, his technique, his plans to go professional. He was strong, yes. But reckless. Arrogant. The kind of fighter who relied on intimidation instead of strategy. The night at Murphy's bar hadn't been chance. Jessica texted me, asking to meet about divorce papers. But Brock was already waiting when I got there, positioned like it was all rehearsed. They wanted to humiliate me. To break me down in public, film it, and use it as proof that Calvin Briggs, the soldier, the husband, the protector, was nothing more than a washed-up veteran who couldn't handle the real world. But they forgot something. I spent years studying operations, ambushes, setups, deception, and the first rule of survival. You don't run from the battlefield. You learn it. You own it. I sat in my truck for an hour after leaving Murphy's bar, the engine humming, the heater blasting against the night chill. My hands were steady, but inside my chest, something twisted, tight, coiled, cold. It wasn't the threat itself. I'd faced men who carried real weapons, men who wanted me dead for reasons far deeper than jealousy. Brock was nothing compared to them, a playground bully in a grown man's body, a fighter who mistook bravado for dominance. No, what gnawed at me was the setup. Jessica's text had been clean, simple. Can we meet tonight? I think it's time we talked about our future. No mention of Brock. No warning. Just a trap disguised as closure. And I walked right into it. But once you've survived ambushes overseas, you stop seeing events as random. You learn to spot the details. The way Brock had been waiting near the back exit. The way Jessica stood at his side with her arms crossed. Her body language rehearsed, her silence weaponized. This wasn't a spontaneous outburst. This was orchestration. I thought back to the flicker I'd seen in Brock's eyes when I rolled up my sleeves. That moment when he realized the battlefield wasn't his alone. He covered it with laughter, but the doubt was there. That flicker told me something he didn't want anyone else to know. He needed to control the stage, the audience. Without that, his strength meant nothing. Then I remembered something else. In the reflection of Murphy's window, I'd seen Brock holding his phone at an angle. Recording. The whole confrontation wasn't just for Jessica, it was for an audience. Friends, family, maybe even his online followers. A video of the big, tough veteran backing down. Proof that Brock was the real alpha now. I clenched the steering wheel, not in rage, but recognition. This wasn't a fight. It was an operation. A public relations campaign disguised as a confrontation. And I had just been cast as the fall guy. But operations can be countered. Deceptions can be turned inside out. I pulled out my phone and scrolled back through Jessica's text. Simple. Deceptive. Clean. And then the image seared into my mind, her smile as Brock whispered in her ear after I walked away. A smile that wasn't relief, wasn't love, it was satisfaction. They thought they had humiliated me. That I would disappear quietly into the night, another broken soldier left behind by the world. But they underestimated what 14 years in special operations teaches you. You don't react. You study. You gather intelligence. You wait for the right moment, and when it comes, You strike with precision so clean that your enemy never even sees the blade. I put the truck in gear and drove, not to my apartment, but to the house Jessica and I once shared. Our house. My tools were still in the garage. My records still locked in the office closet. Evidence of the man I really was. The man they had just declared war on. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. A quiet, suburban street where neighbors watered lawns and kids rode bikes, blissfully unaware that inside one of these homes, a war was about to be planned. Our house, my house, still carried her scent. Lavender candles, faint traces of her perfume woven into the walls. But that night, it no longer felt like ours. It felt like a forward operating base. I went straight to the office closet. Inside were the things I'd boxed away when Jessica said she needed space. Commendations in neat folders. Deployment records marked with stamps of clearance. Photos of my unit. Men whose eyes carried the same 1,000-yard stare I saw in the mirror. Letters from commanders who trusted me with their lives. I spread it all across the desk, each document, each memory, each scar on paper reminding me of who I really was. Not some washed-up construction worker. Not the broken veteran Jessica wanted people to see. No, I was forged in places where hesitation meant death. And Brock. He was forged in gyms, under fluorescent lights, with music blaring and crowds cheering. He didn't know what it was to fight without an audience. He didn't know what it meant to fight for keeps. I opened my laptop. Fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment before muscle memory took over. Secure networks. Encrypted access codes I hadn't touched in years. People owed me favors. Men and women who understood the bond of service, who knew that when one of us called, it wasn't for something petty. I made the first call at 11:15 p.m. Derek Matthews. We'd run missions together in Afghanistan. He transitioned to private security after leaving the service, building a web of connections in the MMA world. "Calvin," he said when he answered, his voice gruff but steady. "Been a long time. What's going on?" "Need some intel," I told him. "A fighter named Brock Williams. Real name, fight record, the works. And Derek, if there's anything he doesn't want the world to know, I need that too." He hesitated. "You in trouble?" "The opposite. I'm preventing it. I'll get back to you in an hour." I hung up and stared at the screensaver flickering across my laptop. Images of desert landscapes, places I'd tried to bury. But they reminded me of the first rule they drilled into us. Know your enemy better than he knows himself. Midnight passed. I poured black coffee and started sketching a plan in the back of an old construction notebook. Surveillance. Weak points. Leverage. Just like we used to map enemy compounds. Only this time, the target wasn't a warlord or an insurgent cell. It was a loudmouth fighter and the woman who betrayed me. By 12:40 a.m., my laptop held a profile Brock Williams wouldn't recognize as his own. His real name. His real financial situation. The truth behind his padded fight record. Every weakness, every fracture line waiting for the right amount of pressure. Jessica thought she'd traded a soldier for a protector. Brock thought he'd intimidated a veteran into silence. They were both about to learn the same lesson. Fighting in a cage is sport. Fighting for survival is war. And I had just chosen my battlefield. The report Derek sent me was brutal. Brock Williams, 31. Fought under a stage name because Williams didn't sell tickets. 3 wins in amateur circuits, all against opponents with losing records. 1 loss he'd buried so deep you had to know where to dig, knocked out cold in the second round by a journeyman who retired a week later. But the real crack in the armor wasn't in the cage. It was outside it. Debt. Credit cards maxed. A loan from a payday advance service that charged interest rates so obscene it bordered on criminal. And worst of all, ties to a local promoter with a reputation for fixing fights. Derek flagged the name with 2 words in bold: organized crime. I sat back, exhaling slowly. The picture was clear now. Brock wasn't just some arrogant fighter who stole my wife. He was a man clinging to an image built on sand. One wrong push, and his entire facade would collapse. Jessica didn't know this side of him. Or maybe she didn't care. Maybe the thrill of standing beside a younger, flashier man was enough. But sooner or later, she'd see what I already saw. Brock wasn't strong. He was desperate. And desperate men make mistakes. I poured another cup of coffee and started mapping scenarios in the margin of Derek's file. Option A. Confront them directly. Show Jessica the truth. Tear down Brock's mask with evidence. Option B. Pull the rug out from under Brock publicly. Strip him of his reputation where it mattered most, in front of the crowd he craved. Option C. Sit back, wait, and let his own vices do the work for me. The soldier in me leaned toward precision. Control the variables, eliminate the threat. The man in me, the husband betrayed, wanted Jessica to see. To see that the man she'd chosen over me wasn't a warrior. He was a fraud. I leaned back in the chair, the house creaking with the kind of silence that follows betrayal. For the first time in weeks, my hands weren't shaking. My mind was clear. That was when my phone buzzed. A message. From Jessica. We need to meet again. Without Brock this time. Tomorrow night, 7 p.m. same place. I stared at the words until the letters blurred. Without Brock. Was it a trap? A test? Or was the first crack already showing in her confidence? I didn't reply right away. Instead, I closed the laptop, slid Derek's file into my bag, and walked into the kitchen. From the drawer by the fridge, I pulled out the same combat knife I'd carried through 3 deployments. The handle was worn smooth, the steel marked with the faint scratches of old fights. I set it on the counter beside my phone. Tomorrow, one way or another, the battlefield would shift. And when it did, only one of us would walk away with power. The next evening, Murphy's bar looked the same as it always did. Dim lights, sticky floors, the smell of beer soaked into wood that hadn't been replaced in decades. But I walked in different. I wasn't there as the man they'd humiliated. I was there with intel, clarity, and a plan. Jessica was already seated in a corner booth. No Brock. Just her. She wore a gray sweater I'd bought her last winter, though she didn't look like the woman who used to wear it. Her eyes were tired, her lips pressed tight, fingers tapping nervously against her glass of water. Calvin, she said when I sat down. Not cold, not warm. Just cautious. Jessica. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The noise of the bar filled the silence, the clink of bottles, laughter from the pool table, a jukebox humming something forgettable. Finally, she leaned in. I didn't want things to go the way they did the other night. I studied her face. She wasn't lying. Not entirely. But there was a flicker in her eyes, a flicker that told me she wasn't here just to apologize. She was here because something had shifted. You set me up, I said evenly. Brock standing there, waiting, recording. That wasn't an accident. Her jaw tightened. I didn't know he'd. She stopped, caught herself, then shook her head. Okay, maybe I did. But I didn't think it would go that far. I let the silence drag until she looked down at her hands. That was when I spoke. Jessica, I know about him. Her head snapped up. What do you mean? His debts. His losses. The people he's tied to. You think he's strong, but he's not. He's crumbling. And when he goes down, he'll take you with him. Her breath hitched, just slightly. Enough for me to see the truth. She didn't know. Or if she did, she'd buried it under the thrill of being wanted. She tried to recover. You're just trying to scare me. Brock's. He's different. He makes me feel alive. Alive. I leaned forward. Jessica, he's a fraud. He's not a fighter. He's a liability. You traded loyalty for flash, but the flash burns out fast. And when it does, you'll realize you built everything on sand. Her lips trembled. For a second, just a second, I saw the woman who used to sit across from me at our kitchen table, laughing at stupid jokes, holding my hand through nightmares. Then the mask slid back into place. You don't get to tell me what I've built, she whispered. Not after everything. I sat back, studying her. She was split down the middle. Half of her still clung to Brock, to the escape he offered from the quiet stability I'd built. But the other half was starting to see the cracks. That was when my phone buzzed on the table. A message from Derek. Just 2 words. It's happening. I didn't need to open the file to know what it meant. Brock's debts had caught up. The walls were closing in. I looked at Jessica one last time. You wanted a future, Jess. You'd better pray the man you chose can give you one. Then I stood, left a 20 on the table, and walked out. Behind me, she didn't call my name. But I knew she would. Soon. When the fault lines finally gave way. 2 days later, the first domino fell. I got the call from Derek just after dawn. "It's happening faster than I thought," he said. "Your boy Brock? He missed a payment. Wrong people noticed." "Which people?" I asked, though I already knew. "The kind that don't send reminders in the mail. They'll bleed him until he's dry. And when he can't pay, well, let's just say the cage will feel like mercy." I thanked him and hung up, staring at the sunrise bleeding orange over the horizon. Funny thing about watching a man's empire collapse, you don't need to throw a punch. You just let gravity do its job. By noon, word had spread across the local fight scene. A promoter had pulled Brock from the upcoming card. Official statement, personal reasons. The truth, he owed more money than a single fight purse could cover, and whispers said he'd tried to fix his last bout to make a quick score. In the MMA world, reputation is currency. And Brock's stock was crashing. I went to the gym that afternoon, the one he liked to haunt with his entourage. I didn't walk in, I just sat across the street in my truck, sipping coffee, watching. He came out an hour later, jaw tight, voice raised, shoving his coach hard enough to draw stares. No cameras this time. No crowd to cheer him on. Just a man unraveling in daylight. Jessica wasn't with him. Later that night, I got my answer why. A message appeared on my phone, from a number I hadn't seen in months. "Calvin, can we talk? Not at the bar. Somewhere private. Please." No bravado this time. No rehearsed lines. Just fear behind the words. I set the phone down on the counter, next to the combat knife I'd left there like a reminder. Brock was falling. Jessica was reaching. And me. I was standing at the edge of a battlefield I hadn't chosen, deciding whether to pull the trigger or walk away. Because here's the thing about war. Sometimes, the deadliest victory isn't killing your enemy. It's letting him destroy himself while you watch. She chose the place, an old park on the edge of town. The kind with rusting swings and a carousel that hadn't spun in years. It was late, after dark, the only light coming from a flickering street lamp and the pale glow of the moon. Jessica was already there, sitting on a bench with her arms wrapped around herself. No makeup. No performance. Just the woman I used to know, stripped raw by something she couldn't control. When she saw me, she stood. Her eyes searched mine, desperate and unsteady. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. I didn't answer right away. I just watched her, letting the silence hang heavy between us. Soldiers learn the power of silence. It makes the other side speak first. And she did. "It's not what I thought it would be," she whispered. "With him." I stayed still, waiting. At first, it was exciting. The attention, the energy. He made me feel wanted again. Like I wasn't invisible. Her voice cracked. "But it's different now. He's angry. Always on edge. He yells. He breaks things. Last night, he put his fist through the wall because I asked him about money." There it was, the crack splitting wide. "Jessica," I said slowly, "you knew he wasn't me. But you didn't know what he was." Tears welled in her eyes. She shook her head. "I thought I was choosing strength. But it's weakness, isn't it? All of it. The fights, the bravado, it's all just empty." I stepped closer, close enough to see her shaking hands. "He's a fraud, Jess. And frauds don't fade quietly. When men like him start losing, they get dangerous. Not just to themselves. To everyone around them." She swallowed hard. "I'm scared, Calvin." I believed her. For the first time since this mess began, I saw no performance, no manipulation. Just fear. But fear wasn't enough. "You made your choice," I told her. "Now you're living with it." Her tears spilled over. "Are you saying you won't help me?" I let the question hang, my jaw tightening. Part of me wanted to turn away, to let her feel the weight of betrayal the way I had. But another part, the soldier, the husband who once would have burned the world for her, hesitated. Because no matter how far she'd gone, no matter how deep the wound, she was still Jessica. And war has rules. One of them is simple. You don't leave your own behind. I exhaled slowly. "I'll help. But not for us. For you. Understand that." Her nod was small, almost broken. But it was enough. Behind us, a car engine roared in the distance. I glanced toward the sound, instincts flaring. The battlefield was shifting again. And something told me Brock wasn't going down quietly. The sound of that engine stuck with me. Not just background noise, it was a warning. A predator circling. The next day, the news broke through the fight forums before it hit anywhere else. Brock had been thrown out of his gym. Not just parted ways, thrown out. Word was he'd snapped during sparring, broke a teammate's nose with an illegal elbow, then threatened the coach when he tried to step in. Somebody had recorded part of it, and the clip was already spreading. No crowd this time. No chance. Just raw footage of a man unraveling. By afternoon, Brock's debts had gone public in the worst way. A photo of him arguing outside a payday lender hit social media, the caption mocking him, "Champ can't pay his bills?" His followers, the ones who had worshipped his every post, were turning on him. And men like Brock, they don't handle humiliation well. That night, Derek called again. His tone was low, urgent. "He's slipping, Cal. Bad. Saw him at a dive bar downtown, drunk, picking fights with guys half his size. One wrong word and he's throwing punches." "Any of them hit back?" I asked. "Not yet. But it's coming. And if it doesn't, the guys he owes will make sure of it." I hung up, staring at the wall. Brock wasn't just falling, he was accelerating. And Jessica, knowingly or not, was tied to him as he plummeted. That became clear 2 nights later. I was driving back from the range when my phone lit up with her name. I answered, and all I heard at first was breathing. Shaky, uneven breathing. "Jess." Her voice came through, broken and small. "He knows I talked to you." I slid down my spine. "What happened?" He grabbed me, threw my phone across the room. Said if I ever went behind his back again, I'd regret it. She was crying now, raw panic in her words. "Calvin, he's not the man I thought he was. He's dangerous. I don't know what to do." I gripped the wheel tighter, knuckles whitening. The soldier in me was already moving, mapping entry points, response times, contingencies. "Listen to me," I said firmly. "You're going to leave the house. Now. Don't pack a bag. Don't argue. Just go. I'll find you." There was silence on the line, broken only by her shaky breath. Then, crash. A muffled yell. Brock's voice. The call went dead. I pulled the truck onto the shoulder, heart hammering, a lifetime of combat discipline fighting against the surge of rage. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This wasn't about pride or revenge. This was about survival. And Brock Williams had just crossed the line from fraud to threat. Jessica didn't wait for me. By the time I traced her call and pulled into their neighborhood, the place was lit like a warning flare. Porch light blazing. A curtain ripped halfway off the window. One of Brock's boots thrown on the lawn, like it had been kicked out during the chaos. Her car was gone. I circled once, slow, scanning for movement. No Jessica. No Brock. Just silence and the faint sound of a TV playing inside. Then my phone buzzed. A text, number blocked. "Calvin. I'm running. Please. I don't know where to go." Relief and fury hit me at the same time. She was alive. She'd gotten out. But she was alone, and if Brock was hunting her, that made her a target. I called Derek. He put hands on her. She bolted. He swore under his breath. Then he's coming after her. And a man like that, he won't stop until he's got her back under his thumb, or in the ground. I gunned the truck down the highway, scanning every car I passed. Jessica wasn't thinking straight. I knew her patterns. When she panicked, she went to familiar places, the church near her mother's, the coffee shop she loved, or the overlook we used to drive to back when we were kids. I checked the first 2. Nothing. It was the overlook where I found her car. Parked crooked, driver's door still open, headlights bleeding into the night. And Jessica, standing by the guardrail, trembling, her phone clutched in both hands like it was the only thing keeping her upright. I pulled up fast, killed the engine, and walked to her. She spun when she heard my boots on the gravel, eyes wide until she recognized me. "Calvin." Her voice cracked. He went crazy. He said I was his. That if I left, he'd. Her words broke apart, choked by fear. I placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "You did the right thing, Jess. You got out. That's the hard part." She shook her head. "No, you don't understand. He's not going to stop. He said he'd rather burn everything down than lose me. That was when the sound hit us, distant at first, then closer. An engine tearing up the road, headlights cutting through the trees. Jessica's face went pale. It's him. I turned toward the sound, every nerve in my body locking into soldier mode. No hesitation. No doubt. Brock Williams was coming. And this time, there wouldn't be cameras, or a crowd, or any place for him to hide. The roar of Brock's engine grew louder, bouncing off the trees until it felt like thunder rolling straight toward us. Jessica gripped the guardrail, eyes wide, every breath shallow and sharp. Headlights cut the darkness as his black Dodge roared into view. He braked hard, tires screeching, gravel spraying like shrapnel. The truck angled across the Overlook's entrance, blocking us in. He stepped out. Not the Brock Williams the cameras adored. This was something raw, feral. Shirt half-buttoned, hair wild, eyes bloodshot. His hands twitched like he couldn't decide whether to strangle or swing. "Jess!" he barked, voice slicing the night. "Get in the damn truck." She flinched but didn't move. I took one step forward, planting myself between them. My voice came out calm, cold. "It's over, Brock. Walk away." He laughed, a harsh, broken sound. "You think you can take what's mine? You think you're some kind of hero?" His eyes flicked to Jessica, then back to me. "She chose me, old man. Not you." I didn't blink. She chose survival. That's why she's standing behind me now. His jaw clenched, veins bulging in his neck. He started pacing, like a caged animal, circling just far enough to test my footing. "You don't get it, do you? Without me, she's nothing. Without me, I'm nothing." His voice cracked, rage spilling into desperation. "And I won't be nothing." He lunged forward, quick and reckless. I didn't move at first. Years of training drilled into my bones. Don't flinch, don't overcommit, wait for the opening. He swung wild, a looping right hook fueled by pure fury. I stepped inside it, driving my forearm up to deflect, then slammed my shoulder into his chest. He staggered back, air bursting from his lungs. "Stay down," I warned. But Brock Williams wasn't built for surrender. He spat blood onto the gravel, grinned with cracked teeth, and came at me again. Behind me, Jessica screamed. The night had become a battlefield. No ropes, no refs, no crowd to cheer. Just me, him, and the choice of how far I was willing to go. And for the first time since this war began, I wasn't thinking about betrayal. I was thinking about survival. Brock came at me like a bull charging red. Wild. Sloppy. Dangerous. His fists cut the air, each swing a roar of muscle and rage, but rage doesn't win fights, control does. I slipped the first punch, let the second glance off my shoulder, then buried a short, sharp jab into his ribs. The sound he made was half cough, half growl. "Stop it!" Jessica screamed behind me, her voice ragged. "Both of you, please." But Brock didn't hear her. He didn't want to. He was lost, drowning in the only thing that ever gave him worth. Violence. He swung again, an ugly haymaker meant to take my head off. I ducked under it, grabbed his arm, and twisted. His knee buckled, his body slamming into the hood of his own truck. The metal dented with the impact. "Stay down," I said again, voice low, steady. He snarled, pushing off the truck, blood dripping from his mouth. "You think you're better than me? You think you can take her?" "I don't have to take her," I shot back. "She already left you." That was the kill shot, not my fists, but the truth. His face twisted, eyes burning, and he roared like an animal cornered for the last time. He tackled me, and we hit the gravel hard. The world narrowed to fists, elbows, and grit in my teeth. His strength was raw, brutal, the kind that could crush bone if it landed clean. But strength without discipline is just noise. I took the hits that didn't matter, rolled with the momentum, then drove my knee into his gut and flipped him onto his back. I mounted, raining down controlled strikes. Not to kill, not yet, but to break the fight out of him. His defenses crumbled. His breath came in ragged gasps. "Behind me," Jessica sobbed, voice trembling. "Calvin, please don't." But Brock wasn't done. Even broken, he spat blood up at me, defiant to the last. "Do it. If you're a real man, finish it." My fist hovered inches from his face, veins surging in my arm. This was it, the line between soldier and executioner. between justice and vengeance. And for a split second, I didn't know which side I stood on. My fist hung above his face, every nerve screaming for release. One strike and it would all be over. Brock looked up at me with blood in his teeth and madness in his eyes. Do it, he hissed. Be the man I know you are. Kill me. The night went silent except for Jessica's sobs behind me. Her voice cracked the air. Calvin, if you do this, you'll lose yourself. Her words cut deeper than his fists ever had. I froze. Combat had always been clear. Identify the enemy, eliminate the threat. But this wasn't war. This was something darker. If I crossed that line, I wouldn't just end Brock, I'd chain myself to him forever. I lowered my fist. My chest heaved as I stood, leaving him broken on the gravel. You're done, Brock, I said, voice steady. Not because I killed you. Because you killed yourself. The man you pretended to be, the champion, the hero, he's already dead. All that's left is a hollow fraud. He groaned, trying to rise, but his body wouldn't answer. I turned away, offering him nothing more. Jessica rushed to my side, trembling, her eyes locked on mine. Relief and guilt tangled in her gaze. Thank you, she whispered. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone must have heard the fight. Red and blue lights began to bleed through the trees. By the time the police reached us, Brock was still on the ground, barely conscious, muttering curses that held no power anymore. They cuffed him, read his rights, and dragged him into the back of a cruiser. The crowd he always craved wasn't there. No cameras, no chance. Just silence and defeat. Jessica and I stood side by side, watching the taillights vanish. She slipped her hand into mine, hesitant, fragile. I don't know what comes next, she said softly. But I know it's not him. I nodded, eyes fixed on the dark road. Then it's a start. The night air felt lighter somehow, the storm finally broken. For the first time in years, I wasn't haunted by what I'd lost. I was defined by what I refused to become. And as the dawn crept over the horizon, I knew one thing with certainty. Brock Williams was gone. And I was still here.